and any attempt at repair. "This is where it all comes together," Jolene said, stopping at the threshold of the warehouse. The floor of the massive building stretched out of sight. Racks holding parts and equipment partitioned the space into sections. Jolene watched the workers at various stations, defeat painting her face. "This is the purpose of this planet, our only export." "The solace ink," Clew said. "Modular pieces for Travis's Dyson sphere." Jolene graced Clew with a smirk that wasn't entirely judgmental. "Do you think it's right for a company or government to monetize a sun? That's essentially what Murphy is doing." Clew shook his head at the blunt way she explained it all. "I've never really thought about it." "Bullshit," Jolene said, locking Clew into her gaze. "I think the situation on Rodinia is both more complicated and simpler than you just stated," Clew said. Jolene raised an eyebrow. "That's either really insightful or a mouthful of double-talking nonsense." "I'm sure you'll come to a verdict on my potential insight without my input," Clew said. "Why are we here?" "We're here to talk," Jolene said, voice stiff. She still had not strayed from the doorway to the manufacturing warehouse. "But first, I need to know what's in that head, and without all the mysticism. Do you see the problems on this planet?" "I'm aware," Clew said, throwing up his hands. "But the business is none of my concern. I manage the spiritual affairs of the people." "But you don't believe that," Jolene said, almost demanding Clew to agree. "Not anymore." A yellow pathway stretched out before the entrance, marking safe passage along the manufacturing floor. Outside the path was commotion, forklifts, and pallets of supplies. Two workers walking along the pathway spotted Clew. They paused, momentarily stricken before each giving bows and rushing off. Other workers from the assembly floors beyond were also noticing Clew, though some seemed to recognize Jolene as well. Clew shook his head, turning away from the scene. "I don't know what I believe, Jolene. The world was more simple yesterday." "No, it wasn't, dummy," Jolene said with her trademark unapologetic bluntness. "Just your thoughts were. Walk with me." Jolene stepped out into the manufacturing floor, taking care not to walk within the designated safety pathway. Clew followed, walking parallel to her within the pathway. They were about to pass a row of shelving and stationary equipment that partitioned off one of the manufacturing stages. "You know that path doesn't actually do anything, right?" Jolene said. "You failing to see its purpose does not negate its usefulness," Clew said. "Now I'll ask again. Why are we here?" Jolene was preparing yet another disrespectful response when a shift manager spotted Clew and almost lost his eyes and gum because of the shock expanding his face. "Elder!" He rushed forward, offering a rushed, apologetic bow. "Forgive me. We were unaware that you would be visiting following your address. We can assemble in the meditation room if you like." "We're observing in an unofficial capacity," Jolene said, using a level of tact Clew hadn't known she possessed. She followed with a benevolent smile in the same class of Clew's standard greeting. "Pay us no mind. There will be no evaluation from me, and no need for services for the elder." "Very well," the shift manager said, face splitting into the same smile. There was something familiar and expected in that interaction, despite his words. "Please inform me if I can assist your visit in any way." "Thank you," Jolene said. The shift manager departed, repeatedly checking his clipboard as he rushed to address a congestion of workers on his floor. Clew watched him go. "Why don't you tear them down as you do me?" "None of them need a reminder to take themselves less seriously," Jolene said with uncharacteristic honesty. She shook her head. "They don't need that." Clew glared at her from the safety pathway. And you think I do? Jolene scoffed. Please. She pointed at Clew. You need to snort about 1,000 ground-up Xanaxes before I even think about going easy on you. A growl escaped Clew. It was a testament to his annoyance that he did not suppress the reaction in fear of a transient seeing him project negativity. Why are we here? Jolene lit up, as if she had been maneuvering Clew this entire conversation, which she had. Because that manager you just spoke to, I own him, same as the workers. Clew responded with an unimpressed shrug. They're slaves, so, yeah. Not like that, dummy, Jolene said in scorn. They're loyal. They can think for themselves, a trait that is in short supply on this gutted rock. We can talk here. No one will know. Not Travis, not your anointed ones. Clew turned from her, unsure of what to say. He knew what Jolene wanted from him. A part of him welcomed the idea. Another part of him reviled it. The part Travis had programmed into him. Clew used to have such grand ambitions. That was what men like Travis did. They offered a good life in exchange for loyalty, but the true cost was the great life you could have had. Clew began to walk along the warehouse, observing workers in various stages of assembly. The solar sinks coming together in this final stage was the result of a long supply chain of refineries and manufacturers. Jolene followed behind. Did you know? Clew asked, not looking back. Know what? Jolene asked in exasperation. She strained to catch up. Don't be vague with me like you are in your sermons. On the edge of the walkway, Clew stopped in front of a lineup of solar panels. They were all folded up for transport. Luna's initiative was to inspect those. She had given everything to that single purpose for 20 years. They're slaves. You're a slave. I'm a slave. Did you know? Jolene pulled up beside Clew. Holy shitballs, Exalted One. You're just barely realizing this? I didn't see before. Clew said, eyes locked on the panels. Thousands of parts went into the solar sinks. Processors, telecommunications, power collection and storage. And all of it had to be rated for use in space whilst in close orbit to his sun. Didn't see or chose not to? Jolene asked. Her hard eyes pressed into Clew. Surely you noticed how underfunded our security is, and on a planet harboring slaves? The obvious truth is that you saved Travis years of work and infrastructure by developing the perfect moral system for this planet. He couldn't have done this without you. Clew closed his eyes, unsure at how to process the damning accusation. Was he mad at that injustice, or that Travis had outmaneuvered him? Travis ran the operations, but I managed the people. I was just as important to this operation as he, but he still took advantage of me. Jolene gave a small nod. Now you see. Clew turned and ran his hands through his hair. Bollocks. He paced a few steps away from Jolene and the solar panels. You created this mess, Jolene's voice called after Clew. Me? Clew turned on a dime in a fury. You brought me here. Jolene stood her ground and even took an aggressive step towards Clew. Yeah, that was 20 years ago, darling. I'm not the same person I was, and neither are you. She passed Clew, walking through the warehouse into the next partition of flooring. Clew now followed her. This next section seemed to be storage for completed solar sinks. From here, they would travel to the Citadel, where the elevator would lift them from the atmosphere. You disapprove of Travis's actions on Rodinia. Jolene wandered over to the closest completed sink. They were arranged in a grid on pallets, and about the size of a 21st century washing machine. A worker across the floor was positioning another with a forklift. Jolene put her hand on the solar sink, looking at the folded-up device with trepidation on her face. She took a trembly breath and spoke. I despise everything he has done in building this planet. Every day, I wish I could take back the moment he revived me. It's been so clear to me for the last decade. But you just settled into your role like a good dog. Clew watched her from the confines of the safety path. You have no place passing moral judgment on me. He's had you wrapped around his finger for far longer than me. Jolene pursed her lips and tilted her head. The difference is, I eventually saw through the bullshit. She pounded the solar sink with the bottom of a clenched fist. Clew folded his arms, finding her argument flimsy at best. Then why haven't you done anything? Because you are more powerful than Travis, Jolene snapped, still standing 10 feet away from Clew. At least in the eyes of the people. To help them, I needed you to break first. Clew lulled his head back. Why change it? The project has 5 years left before we scale back to maintenance. The planet is dry. The sphere is almost built. Why stop it? 2/3 of the workers will die at the end. Did you know that? Jolene stated with a flat voice. Clew had not known, and only just had the good sense not to allow his face to communicate the fact. He said nothing, not trusting himself to win the next move. Jolene spoke again. The transients that no longer serve a purpose will never live again. Travis can kill them without consequence. Luna Hawthorne may be an outlier, but for the most part, the people on this planet were forgotten to history. No one will ever find their DNA or uncover their name. I know because I helped select them, and I'm one of them. Forgotten, without love or connection. I have no one, Clew. Travis was my everything for longer than I care to admit. Now, I see his game for what it is, not something someone so exalted would understand. I understand, Jolene. Clew raised his hand, unable to hide that tremble in his fingers. It was all too much. I'm one of the oldest people in existence. I've spent that time surrounded by people, but alone. Misunderstood. Jolene pouted her lip. Aw, poor wee Clew, so sad. Clew rolled his eyes. I don't need your input. Why am I here? I want you, Clew, Jolene said with perfect confidence. I have people all over this planet crying out for reprieve, but unable to speak because of how pervasive your doctrine is. I need your loyalty to shift from Travis to them. Clew shook his head. There is nothing wrong with my doctrine. Jolene smirked. Debatable, but in the spirit of cooperation, fine. The doctrine is good. But change the application. Shift the focus to set them free. Real freedom, not promises of a paradisiacal future. They locked eyes across from one another. She wanted something from him, and a way forward was becoming clear. Clew just needed to position himself. Travis needs to be removed. I agree. Jolene spotted something across the floor. A steel rod. She crossed to where it lay and stooped down to retrieve it. She swung it casually about as she returned to the solar sink and tapped the device with the rod. Prove it. Destroy this thing. She held out the rod to Clew. He still had not stepped off the safety pathway. She looked almost comical, standing there 10 feet away and expecting Clew to come destroy the solar sink. A team of workers passed behind Clew on the path, allowing the commotion of the floor to intrude on his thoughts. They were happy, but that happiness was built on a lie. Clew watched them pass with downcast eyes. Finally, he stepped off the safety pathway towards Jolene. He approached, but did not accept the steel rod in her hand. She offered it to him expectantly, but Clew ignored her. Instead, Clew placed his hand against the folded-up solar sink. He dug his fingernails into a crease running along the top. He pried the device apart, unfolding the solar panel from the side. Near the hinge where the panel connected to the sink was a power ribbon. There was just enough space in the gap for Clew to hook the ribbon with his finger and pull, breaking it in two. Finished, he stood upright and closed the panel back into the solar sink. Jolene had an appreciative expression on her face. Clew raised eyebrows in a similar smirk to the one Jolene so often gave Clew. There are other ways of causing destruction. This unit has already passed its final inspection. They would never waste resources lifting it out of the atmosphere if they thought it was broken. A smile split Jolene's face. I knew I'd get around to liking you eventually. You're on board, 100%? Yes, Clew said. He was prepared to start something new, though he doubted he and Jolene would end up on the same page. Good, Jolene said, relieved. Her eyes were red, and she seemed to struggle to subdue her smile. Give me a month to figure some things out. Prepare to adjust your ministry. Clew sighed. I suppose you'll want me to halt the redistribution I planned for Sector 7. Jolene paused, seeming to not have considered that possibility. No, actually, I think you should double down on that. Only, say Sector 7 has been such a great example of dedication that you're redistributing them as a way of strengthening the others. That will be a hard lie to sell. Even the idea of saying something so untrue stressed Clew out. It won't be, Jolene said with confidence. The people of Sector 7 will be perfect transients until this blows up. You have my word. Fine, Clew said. Any cooperation between them would require a level of trust. Clew just hoped she knew what she was doing. I'll put out a statement tonight. Good, Jolene said, lighting up in a way she had never done before with Clew. We can break Travis's control on this planet. We just need to beat him in his own game.